Hi again, thanks for tuning into the fourth and final part of our discussion on the practicalities and benefits of working with alternative legal service providers. I'm Jonathan Townend, Head of Legal Services at Konexo, and I was recently joined by Vanya Bromfield from Smith's Group, Chris Dye from Johnson Controls, Anna Lawrence from Elementis Global, and Kate Newbound from HSBC to talk about current trends. In the previous three sections, we covered some of the benefits of working with alternative providers, change management and the use of legal front doors, and we're now going to consider how to get started on working with ALSPs. How is it at JCI and Elementis? Is there a sort of I think I know the answer, Chris, but in terms of how instructions come in and your ability to assess them all, is that forms based, centralized? How far have you got with that?
Yeah, so we using Salesforce as a helpful tool, but we just go on value. So we kind of use value as a proxy for risk. What we're mostly talking about are commercial transactions, so sales transactions on someone else's paper. And 9 times out of 10, the risk in something at 500 grand is likely to be higher than something at 50. And we can try and be more technical about it, and we've tried to do things around, well, are there certain indemnities and IP grants? But actually, if you want to keep it simple with a sales organization, you just look at the dollars basically, and that makes it simple. I would say the whole triage part is one of the most difficult pieces of this, Kate. I think to your point, dealing with such varied qualities and levels of instruction, and everything's the most urgent, most desperate, most business critical thing in the world for that person. It's just how it is. So I think it's and that part of me feels like you need, if you're going to have a kind of a more organic conversation at any point, it's that triage bit to make your kind of internal customer feel like they're important, and actually spend a bit of time in that stage, maybe on a kind of a human level, to get the most efficient piece of work thereafter. So it's a difficult nut to crack, though. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the worst examples we've seen are where the intake has involved an awful lot of admin and none of that personal touch, Chris, and in some cases still doesn't give you the information that you need to be completely and ambiguous about the request. And we've seen various attempts to sort of soften that slightly by, well, you might have in mind the 5 or 6 things that you really need to know in order to triage appropriately, but you can do it through a conversation, and then you might build it up over time to something approaching a form or a workflow tool. And best case scenario, something that the business already use, like Salesforce, where they don't have to come out of that, log into something separate for legal and do what they will feel is a load of admin. That can be quite painful. How does it work at Elementis, Anna? How do things come into you, and how are you able to sort of assess each?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're light years away from or behind some of the processes that have been outlined by the other participants at the moment. We do have an intake form just for NDAs, but even with that, as some of the others have noted, I think where I worry is that it's not sufficiently detailed to tease out all the pertinent data and risks, and nothing can really transplant that conversation with the requester to just understand it, and that's just NDAs. On the other hand, as you know, John, in my last role, we had just for the sort of the tranche of procurement contracts, we had a really great triage process and request process, and it all fed through into sort of a macro spreadsheet that then all the lawyers from the different business units involved reviewed every couple of weeks. And it was just great because it kept us all honest, it kept us all on track, and it gave the business really good visibility about where their request was in the pipe. So I have seen it work really well, but I think it's a lot of hard work to put together. Yeah, absolutely. Certainly from
a standing start, it's quite culturally quite difficult, I think, as well, to start being seen as someone who's introducing structure, formality, where they're used to just having conversations and things.
And I think it takes a degree of confidence as well, right? And I think as sort of someone still really new in role, and I'm going to have a team of lawyers who will also be brand new to the organisation, there's something to be said for, we've got to have that direct engagement with people who are asking for legal support, and we don't know what we don't know well enough to say it can all be automated, because I don't think we could even put together the right set of questions at this stage. So it's probably a future project to work on for Elementis.
Vanya, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me as well, it's I suppose it's, you know, if you go back and think about what's the aim and the end game, a lot of the time, you know, it really is about freeing up the resources and the time of lawyers. So I guess it's getting that balance, isn't it? That there's, you know, an awful amount of value in even if you just sort of try and, at least in the intake, try and get some level of consistency. I think it's not necessarily feeling like, in order to do a great job on the project, the project to be perceived to have achieved its business aims and sort of required business outcomes, that you have to have some automation in there. I mean, if you're taking the grand total, actually, you're getting intake information. There's a huge amount of value add, both from the relationship building, consistency and checking of information, about picking up the phone and sort of just walking through a form with somebody. If actually then that leads to being able to sort of push it and direct it through the right channels, and it is freeing up the work, then, you know, the return on that work is quicker. It's freed up more time in the legal team internally to work on other projects. So actually it is kind of a win all round.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, we've covered some good ground there around you know, categorizing the work that might be suitable for ALSPs in the first place, and, you know, not necessarily just the lower end stuff. There's also you know, increasing level of complexity that's being covered. How you went about that change management, some of the benefits that we've seen, and, you know, to bring colleagues with you on that journey. So thank you to all of our speakers and to everyone for watching. We hope you enjoyed the discussion, and please watch this space for further videos in our Perspectives series.